Hey guys, I'm Michelle from Virtual Hand Care, and in this video we are going to do a beginner follow along exercise routine after an ulnar gutter cast or splint removal. Now typically the reason why you have an ulnar gutter cast is because you had a fracture or an injury to the small finger side of your hand. Perhaps a boxer's fracture, that's a fracture of the metacarpal neck of the small finger. You could also have maybe a metacarpal shaft fracture, maybe even a base fracture. You could even have a fracture of the ring finger somewhere. Now keep in mind there are also variations of the type of ulnar gutter cast or splint that you also might be put in. It does truly depend on your type of injury as well as your doctor's protocol too. But regardless of what you were put in, more than likely you probably are feeling some stiffness to that small finger side of your hand. So we're gonna just get started with a couple of beginner type of range of motion exercises just to help work through some of that stiffness. Now, quick disclaimer, always make sure that you have approval by your doctor to start any kind of exercise program. So this first exercise is we're going to work on finger extension, because if you've been in an ulnar gutter cast, you know that your fingers haven't gone straight for quite a while. So sometimes that can be difficult to do. We're going to go ahead and just lay our hand flat on a table, just as flat as you can. Now, if this is pretty uncomfortable, you can also use a pillow. And so what you're looking to do is just lightly try to stretch the fingers a little bit more straight. And you want to just kind of hold that at a position to whatever is comfortable for you. You don't want to take your hand and kind of just push just yet. If you're using a pillow and that feels pretty easy to do, then you want to go ahead and just get rid of that pillow and then work on a harder surface, something flat, because then you could really see how far are you from going flat on that table. So you want to go ahead and then use that surface, that harder surface, and lightly try to push down and try to get those fingers flatter and flatter, and really try to make sure and see if you can get that palm to touch flat down on the table. And so then what you would want to do is hold these for a good 5 to 10 seconds or longer, and then you would want to repeat about 10 to 20 repetitions a couple times a day. Okay, now what we want to do to progress that is go into finger abduction and adduction. So to do that, we want to go ahead and work on spreading our fingers apart and together, and apart and together, and apart and together. And now remember, because your small finger and ring finger and maybe even your middle finger was smashed together in that ulnar gutter cast, this might be a little hard to do to create that space again between those fingers. So this abduction exercise and adduction exercise is a really great way to slowly start increasing some of that much needed web space between our fingers. And so then you would want to stay here and do a good 10 to 20 repetitions of those. So, okay, so then the next exercise is for your wrist, and we are going to be doing some wrist extension and wrist flexion. So go ahead and prop up on your elbow, or you can do this on your lap if it's more comfortable for you. But we're going to work on the wrist now, because typically the wrist is included in an ulnar gutter cast. Not all the time, but sometimes your wrist can get very stiff. So it is important to make sure that you get that wrist moving. So we're going to slowly start to bring that wrist back in extension and forward in flexion. But notice when I'm doing this exercise, I am completely relaxing my fingers. So as I go forward into a little wrist flexion, my fingers are opening. And as I bring my wrist back, my fingers are curling. That is a normal pattern that happens when you relax your fingers and when you just move the wrist. So what we're doing is getting a little finger movement without really trying. So we're getting a little wrist flexion, but a little finger extension, and we're getting a little wrist extension and a little finger flexion. And again, you would want to do about 10 of these, just going nice and slow, staying back for a second or two, and going forward for a second or two. Now what we want to do is we want to work on knuckle bender exercises. So what we want to do is try to straighten those fingers as much as you can, And then what you want to do is try to just bend at the knuckles, just those large knuckles, and you're trying to keep the rest of the fingers straight. And then you're going to go back up. Now for you, your finger motion might kind of look like this, right? Your fingers that were not in the cast might be able to move really well, and then these other 2 or 3, however many were in your cast or splint, might be kind of delayed, and that's okay. You just want to move them to what they can do right now. Any kind of active movement or active pumping, even if it's in a limited motion at this time, is good. That does improve. And again, you would want to do about 10 to 20 of these as well. All right, now stay in that knuckle bender position. If you can't get down too far, you're going to take your other hand and you're going to lightly push your knuckles down, just kind of nice and lightly, not aggressive, but you want to just push them down with your other hand. Now, if this is hard to do up in this position, then sometimes coming down in this position where you can kind of get a little more leverage, sometimes being down like this can be a little more comfortable. But I'm going to go ahead and stay up here so I can show you guys. So you're going to go ahead and push those knuckles down nice and gently, hold them down. And now what you're going to do is you're going to try to nice and lightly curl your fingers down to the palm, just to what you can do, and then go back up straight. But you're not going to go all the way straight. You're just going to go down into as much flexion and straight. Notice we're keeping those knuckles down into some flexion, and we're only trying to curl those 2 little joints of each of the fingers. And again, you'd want to do about 10 to 20 of these. Okay, then go ahead and remove your hand. Try to go a little straighter and then curl back down. Then try to go a little straighter and curl back down. And try to go a little straighter and curl back down. And try to go a little straighter and curl back down. So notice what we're doing is we're slowly working on going straight and curling instead of going right from this movement all the way straight. That can be pretty sore. You've been pushing those knuckles down. So you want to slowly work on extension and flexion and just kind of keep that movement going until you feel like you can get that full range of motion in. Now for many of you, you might not have this much of a bend and this much straightening, but that's okay. You keep doing the exercises. You keep doing about 10 to 20 of each of those exercises and it will improve. And go ahead and relax. Good. And so then you would want to do those a couple of times a day. Now, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a like and don't forget to hit that subscribe button below. And if you're looking for more exercises to work through some of that finger, wrist, or arm stiffness, then check out my videos here. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.